Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto. Hope you're all doing great. Hope you're having a great start of this week. And welcome to this new market update. We'll talk about, or at least I will try to talk about everything you need to know. There's quite a lot going on, as most of you have already seen in the last, since the US Open about 1.5 hours ago. A lot of volatility, a lot of volume coming in as well. But other than the last 2 weeks, the volume right now is not necessarily bullish volume. I mean, you can see this high volume candle we had. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin in more detail in a moment. I also want to spend some time talking about some news and some fundamentals. But the highest volume we got was defending this main support level at 93,600, which is also still holding right now. But straight after, you can see we rejected from the fair value gap right here. We left an imbalance over the start of the afternoon in my time zone, right? So about 3, 4, 5 hours ago. And we've respected that, and at this point of time, I have to be fair. I don't really like the reaction from Bitcoin to support, so that opens up a possibility of dropping down into 93,200, which still is like that. The last line of defense seems to be 93,600, 93,200. Which was also the main level that supported us Monday the 28th and Wednesday the 30th. So we'll see, but more on that later. First of all, talking about some fundamentals, S&P 500 still quite strong. So these are US equities, these are stocks, which usually Bitcoin and crypto also are reliant on this, right? So if we actually see bullish stocks, like we saw over the last 2 weeks, that usually also helps for crypto. But that's also one of the key reasons why there's a bit of a dramatic headline of this title, but also in the thumbnail, is that at this point of time, something has changed in the markets, right? First of all, there is some more unrest in the world, right? Gold is going up, and there's some more unrest in the Middle East specifically. But what you usually see is that then the entire financial market starts to retrace, right? And at this point of time, it's different, right? Because we can see that the S&P 500 and the Russell 2000, which very often is named as the stock index that's closest to Bitcoin, those are all still doing fine today, right? So regardless of gold going up, and gold, by the way, it's also not rallying like it was before, regardless of unrest increasing, the equity markets are holding up fine. But then you take a look at Bitcoin and you see that, first of all, it's not holding up fine, and second of all, it's also not reacting or not respecting excuse me, support as it should, or as it would have done the last 2 weeks, right? And then you can also see, if you take a look at the Coinbase Bitcoin price, that the most of the time it is still at a premium, which is good. But sometimes it's actually getting into a discount, which is also significantly different from last week. So then I have to say, be careful, all right? And then I have to issue a market warning right now. You can also see that most of the altcoins, there's obviously exceptions to that rule, but most of the altcoins right now are also very correlated, which historically is not a great sign. Usually when altcoins are uncorrelated, so when you have rallies here and there, that's a good sign for healthy markets. But for all those reasons, all of those combined, I have to be a bit cautious on the markets. Now, having said that, I also don't want to spread too much panic, because if you zoom out to the 12-hour time frame, I would say getting a move into 100,000 is still possible as long as we hold this level right here at 89 and 90,000, right? So do I all of a sudden expect a crash? No, but there are some differences today compared to the last 2 weeks that I do think you need to be aware of. Now, like I said, on the higher time frames, it still looks fine. And like I said, the S&P 500 stocks also are still respecting their uptrends quite well. So therefore, I don't expect a major breakdown yet. But I do think short term, it's more likely we'll push down lower before reclaiming the 93,600 and the area around that, and filling the imbalance, which we also talked about this morning, towards 95,400, excuse me. So this seems to be the most likely direction for Bitcoin due to the correlation. This is also the most likely price action for a lot of altcoins. I do want to talk about some specific altcoins in a moment. But yeah, so this seems most likely, but I do want to, before we talk about altcoins, I do want to say that, if we do see the S&P 500 start to retrace, and if we do see some sort of increased unrest in the world continue, then this is most likely not going to happen. right? So the market is still very reactive to news, and it's also, look, I'll try to keep you updated as soon as I can, but it's also up to you to keep an eye on the price of gold, keep an eye on the volatility index, keep an eye on the S&P 500, right? So yeah, make sure to do that. But for now, I'd say, yes, it's not looking too great, but I do think we'll be able to hold support between 93,000 and 93,600 to get a move into the range highs right here. Now, talking about altcoins, of course, first of all, XRP, that's what I always cover. Very similar to Bitcoin. It's also relatively weak, but that's also what we talked about this morning, that the general structure is not that great. The volume that we got from this initial bounce was not that great. So XRP seems to just be following Bitcoin a little bit lower, but I do think we'll respect the support zone around 2.05 unless we get some major bearish fundamental catalyst, right? So then I'm talking about bad news. So XRP, short-term bearish, but ultimately if you zoom out, I think we are very stable, and I don't expect it to break down. Talking about some major ones, SUI, I made a video on this morning, still hasn't been able to reclaim 3.44. So as it stands now, I still technically have to expect a drop into 3.05. Solana is hanging on by a thread. If we are unable to hold 153.5, I will have to assume that this is going to drop down into 136. Also no significant volume holding up the price right now. So this looks quite similar to XRP, I would say, in that, if we don't see some momentum come in soon, I expect a drop. But this is, it's very much what I see from most altcoins, right? So a couple of coins that do have some momentum right here, but those are quite, normally also harder to trade. We have Particle Network here, so Party, it's a real party over there. High volume, but has already rallied a lot, right? So if we can get some retraces and then a strong reaction at support, might be worth it to buy this. But in general, risky. And then we have Veracity, which some of you might actually still know. So that's VRA. And on the higher time frames, that's trying to get a major breakout. So this might actually be a good opportunity still, regardless of the markets. But still, be wary of the markets, be aware of what's going on, be aware of all the possibilities, and then you should be fine. All right, so that's what I think you need to know. For now, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you all in my next videos. Bye.